Hi there. Another review in the music series looks at The Restless Generation by Pete Frame. And we have previously reviewed his fantastic book on the rock family trees, the Merseybeat era. And this book can be seen in some ways as an amiable counterpoint to Spencer Lee's Halfway to Paradise, which looked at the music scene from the 50s as being better than a lot of people, a lot of critics have said. But Restless Generation is firmly in the camp that there was a lot of rubbish being pervade at that time, and it's a very deep look, highly detailed at the scene, and it opens with, it says, if you're one of the people who like to put exact dates on seminal events, then it has to be October 1949. It was a corrugated iron hut round the side of the White Hart public house in Bath Road, Cranford, that Ken Collier and his mates introduced a handful of curious punters to a primitive musical diversion, a style they had devised themselves based on whatever appropriate instruments were at hand and whatever songs they felt like singing. Ken Collier had a deep passion for a certain type of music, so much so that he joined the Merchant Navy and then jumped ship in the United States in order to play with the jazz heroes that he adored in New Orleans before he was deported for not having a work permit. And then he started various bands, and there's a timeline, very interesting timeline, from Ken Collier, which gave us Chris Barber, which gave us Lonnie Donegan. Now, Lonnie Donegan used to play some odd songs during, not an interval, but time that the rest of the band, Chris Barber's band, could take a rest, and they play these songs, they call them skiffle. And then when they made an album, there was the opportunity to record a couple of extra tracks while in the studio. One of these being Rock Island Line, which was a massive hit, and Skiffle was born. And Skiffle was very important in the history of popular music, because most of the big names, and I include the Beatles in this, started in Skiffle. The Beatles famously with the Quarrymen. But Skiffle died out very quickly because United States rock and roll hit, and the guys who had taken up guitars, T-chest basses and washboards quickly developed, or many of them quickly developed, a love for rock and roll and started playing that instead, and obviously started looking for better instruments and musicality. Anyway, the book looks at that scene and looks at who was around at the scene, also contemporary events, what records were in the charts and so on. There's a big section about the BBC, and Pete Frame rather humorously says it's like being on a drive through beautiful countryside but being stuck behind a slow moving lorry for the whole time, and the BBC was that juggernaut. It influenced so many things, and a lot of it is, really you could say is down to the came from the top. Let me just get the quote. Director General of the BBC, Lord Reith, quote, "To set out to give the public what it wants is a dangerous and fallacious policy involving almost always an underestimate of public intelligence and a continual lowering of standards. He contended, "It is not autocracy but wisdom that suggests a policy of broadcasting on the basis of giving people what they should like and will come to like." And that really was what permeated the BBC. They knew better, and certainly one of the things they didn't like was skiffle and then rock and roll. So you know, as he says, thank God for Radio Luxembourg. There's quite a bit about Tommy Steele in the book, his influence, and he really was a refreshing change. And another big section is on Cliff Richard, and that whole scene with the Two Eyes Coffee Bar in Old Compton Street, Soho, really, which was a tiny little place, but was the fountain for so much of what came into popular music. And some of the other books we'll be reviewing, the guys got their start in the Two Eyes. So Cliff Richard, he his band, the Drifters, got together there, and one of the main members was Sammy Samwell, and they managed to get a record contract, and they go into the studio with no other than Norrie Paramor. Norrie Paramor is or was a main EMI producer who was one of the guys who was the kind of break on a lot of popular music. You know, he was of an older generation. He didn't like the popular music, and he influenced what the musicians were allowed to play. So they put down one track which was called Schoolboy Crush, which was pretty mundane, but then Sammy Samwell had written a number called Move It, and they were allowed to record this, and it was going to be the B-side, but he was persuaded, Paramore was persuaded mainly by his daughter, who said, no, that's the better side. And against his own instincts, he put that out, and it was, and it is, in my opinion, the best and the first British true rock and roll record. And to this day, it's still a fantastic record. Sammy Samwell left the Drifters eventually. He was the bass player, and he was actually replaced by Jet Harris. And they obviously Cliff and the Drifters became the Shadows and went on to great things. So the book really it's chock full. It's delightful. It's funny. It's very cutting in places, withering with some of the descriptions of the kind of music we were force fed. He does. I'll just get another little part for you. As I say, it's quite funny. He mentions, talking about the Drifters and talking about equipment. Up till now, Hank Marvin had been playing an Antoria guitar, a solid-bodied Japanese electric, seemingly designed by someone who had only glimpsed a real electric guitar once and was trying to remember what it looked like. But compared with most guitars on the Two Eyes scene, it looked space-age and cool. So he's really got a good writing style for humour. talking about Tommy Steele, in a try-everything career, he, among many other diversions, played Tony Lumpkin alongside Judi Dench and Peggy Mount in Oliver Goldsmith's She Stoops to Conquer at the Old Vic. He starred in the smash hit musical Half a Sixpence, both in the West End and on Broadway, not to mention the movie. He was nominated for a Golden Globe in The Happiest Millionaire. He danced in shows with Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. He took the leading role in a Gilbert and Sullivan's operetta, Yeoman of the Guard, at appropriately the Tower of London. He wrote and recorded an autobiographical album, My Life, My Song, with producer George Martin. He holds the record for the West End's longest running one-man show, An Evening with Tommy Steele. He wrote a novel, The Final Run, and began work on the first instalment of his autobiography, Bermondsey Boy. He composed a symphony, Portrait of Pablo, and conducted the London Symphony Orchestra performing it. He played squash for Surrey. He has topped the bill at the London Palladium more times than any other artist, and he has had one of his paintings, The Entertainer, accepted for a Royal Academy Summer Exhibition. Did anyone lead a fuller life during the last 50 years of the century than Tommy Steele? Amazing. And he hasn't mentioned the sculpture he did of Eleanor Rigby for the city of Liverpool, and it's there, it's in the Cavern Quarter. I'll be passing it today. It's right opposite a restaurant I visit regularly. Shout out to Casa Italia, and it's very, very popular with tourists, and he donated it to the city of Liverpool for the sum of half a sixpence. So what a splendid chap Tommy Steele was. The book finishes, it has an epilogue where Ian Sammy Samwell was living in America in later life, and he became very ill, and suddenly the hospital was flooded with people who were sending him best wishes and turning up in person because of who he was and having written Move It. And it was very, the hospital administration was amazed, who is this chap? And loads and loads of people reached out to him, and it really is a nice wrap up to the book, because you know, personally, Move It is one of my favourites, and it's on my playlist, and I still listen to it quite frequently. So Restless Generation, terrific read, and I recommend it.